Welcome to Great Talk and Entertainment. I'm your host, KJ, and this is the YouTube channel where I do reviews from movies and TV shows from all your favorite superheroes, including Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and much more. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Great Talk and Entertainment official channel. Now let's go, baby. Welcome to the YouTube channel, everyone. My name is KJ, and today is my spoiler review video for the new movie, which is in theaters right now by DC Studios, Supergirl, the movie. So, again, this is my spoiler review. If you have not seen this, please pause this. And before you go, could you do one thing for me? Could you hit the thumbs up button, aka the like button? That would help my YouTube channel out, and I truly appreciate that. And thank you guys in advance. Come back and let me know what you think about this year's movie of DC Studios Supergirl the movie in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you didn't like it? Or did you hate it? And let me know your DC Studios slash Supergirl, Batman, Superman, whatever DC character fan theory you think what's going to happen next after this film in the comments below. I want to hear it. So again, y'all been warned. This is a spoiler review. Now, before I get into it, I want y'all to check out this skit I made for y'all and come back and check it out. But if you have not seen this movie, check out my non-spoiler review video, which is out right now on the YouTube channel, and check that out. But again, this is a spoiler review, and I'm going to give y'all a few minutes to check out this skit. And after this skit, I'm going to dive deep into this spoiler review. So enjoy the skit, y'all. What's up? All right. So obviously you're watching this video, and this is my spoiler review for the Supergirl movie, and this is part of my little skit. So instead of doing a funny video or whatever, dressing up, I just want to show you a little bit of a, as the cool kids would say, a flex. This is a small flex, just two things I want to show you of items as a collection of mine that I've collected, as you can tell. But I just want to show you two things that I think is really cool that I own. Not a big deal, but the first one is this. I think this is really cool. I got this as a gift, and it's just a picture, but it's based off an old comic book, and it's the DC Secret Origin Special featuring Gotham's villains, which that's a weird thing. But there's obviously Batman in the shadows, but it's like old school Two-Face, old school Penguin, old school the Riddler, right? And what I like about this is it's just really cool looking, and it's kind of odd. It's an odd drawing, but it's a real cool drawing, whoever, to the artist. But it's like, there's money, like just piles of money, and it's like, because these characters only do crimes to take money. Even the Riddler at times just does the crime to steal some money. But definitely the Penguin, 100%. And now Two-Face, because, you know, his life was changed for obvious reasons. But I thought that was really cool. And it's pretty. I think it's pretty looking. And I like when guests comes over and they always look at this. They think it's just unique and an odd thing to hang on your wall. Now the second thing that I got is a popcorn bucket of the Bat single, and it does light up. Yeah, you ain't gonna see it, but it does light up. I can't show y'all because it's just, yeah. But what's really cool is it does light up, and you put popcorn in it. And yes, I use this popcorn bucket all the time when I eat popcorn. But I think it's really cool. It's nice. I got it at the movie theaters at the time, AMC. And it's just really cool, yeah. Not special, and when you run out of batteries, you just put new batteries in. So, and yes, this thing eats batteries real quick. Real quick. But It's a cool collection. People like it, and when I turn off and make it all dark, I sometimes sit this on and look at the bat signal. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I just want to show y'all a little flex. But these are the two things that I am always I love all my collections that I collect, from helmets to Funko Pops to other photos, sign autographs or whatever. But those two and this, I just really admire a lot in my own little home. So that's my little for show and tell slash my little flex. Just want to flex a little bit, but that's it, y'all. But enjoy that spoiler review, y'all, and thank you so much. Peace out. Enjoy the skit, y'all. This film starts off with Crypto the dog as he's waking up Kara as they're in her spaceship that flies over the whole world of the galaxy, not the world, but the whole galaxy. And obviously the spaceship is messy. They're giving up the setting up the tone of the story as like, you know, Crypto is still needs a little bit of training, a little bit of discipline and stuff, uh, for a dog. And Supergirl in this is a single woman who's a bachelor, living like a single person, has no commitment, no responsibility. But again, she is a superhero, so she does. And the tone of this is watching Supergirl go through her growing pains. We're also seeing the story set the tone of her finding her place in life and trying to move on and somewhat be happy and enjoy the present and the future of her life, and to see her struggle through those and overcome those challenges. And so it's setting that up. And there's a song playing. I think it's by This Summer by Sleigh Bells. I think that's the name of the group, which is a new song, but it's a newer, up to date song of this generation. But obviously, throughout this film, there's a lot of not classical, but classic hit songs from the past that maybe our parents grew up listening to, or maybe you grew up listening to. It's same for me as well. But it sets up that, so we hear a lot of cool music through this. Definitely has that Guardian of the Galaxy vibe. So it indicates to me like this film so far has a lot of influence from James Gunn's, as it should. And of course, this film is about Supergirl's birthday week, as she is 23 years old in this film. And we see her celebrate through different planets, different bars slash pubs, and just having a good old time. I mean, there was a scene that I like too, where Crypto and Supergirl are riding the audience waves. If you ever been to a concert or something, either somebody from who's performing a song jumps off in the stage and everybody catches them and they just ride the audience waves, or just a random person in the crowd gets on top and people just moving around. You know how it is, but it's one of those, and it was just really funny because Crypto was doing it too. And what's really interesting in this film is Supergirl and Crypto are not wearing their outfits. So obviously the Supergirl outfit with the skirt, Crypto's not wearing his dog collar that had the S on the collar, like the S on the Superman and Supergirl's chest, and they're both not wearing their capes. So this is the tone of just living free and wild, young, wild, and free. So that has that vibe to it, and it's really cool. And she's going to planets where like the sun's not yellow, So like a red sun, she can feel like a normal human being type thing where she can let cuz she's drunk throughout this film. Not all the time, but she goes to planets where she can't where the alcohol can make her drunk because she was back on planet Earth. She can't get drunk because of her superpowers and healing abilities and stuff. Kind of like Superman, obviously. But we see that, and again, she's having a good time until we get to a scene where we get introduced to a family, and this family is like in the blacksmith business. So this family makes swords, weapons, like medieval stuff, but basically swords mostly, axes, whatever. And they get a visitor from Krim and his gang or crew. And, you know, this does, they said at first, they've been saying this takes inspiration from the comic book Supergirl, a comic book, Woman of Tomorrow. But I think later on, I think the director and James Gunn himself said they didn't really take any inspiration from it, but it kind of does in a way. But Krim in this looks completely different. He looks like a character that reminds me from Guardian of the Galaxy, which again, it's not a bad thing, but in the comic books, he looked like Fabio, like a character you would read in a romance. But they did get the his character and mannerisms correct, where he is somewhat of a psycho. He is just pure evil, and this is a villain to me that actually fits a this film, the concept of this film, the format of the story, which this is a villain who's not top tier like a Thanos or a Dark Side, but he is a villain that's above like a villain like the Joker in the sense of it. But I would say Krim and the Joker, are on the same top tier level of a villain type where this villain is, I would say, above Joker in the sense where this character needed to be defeated. You know, this is a character that's not from planet Earth, but this is a character that's doing things similar to what I would say the Joker would do as far as in the DC comic world or the DCU. But this challenges Supergirl's like moral code and what the Kryptonians represent and what Superman represents, the symbol of Superman, the symbol of Supergirl, which is hope. And it's going to challenge the superhero code a lot. And you see that in foreshadowing. And so when you see him and his crew, the brigands, as I think of what they call them, he's very very mean. He's very a jerk, right? I don't want to cuss on here just in case YouTube gets bad, but he's like, I'm here for my swords. I'm here, like, but he ends up taking out all the families except the one, which is Ruthie Marie Knoll, as she witnesses her mom and dad and brother get get murdered by him, and she's helpless, she's weak, but it's also her origin story to this character. And this is a character, again, the mainstream audience who goes out and sees superhero movies don't recognize her, but if you're like a diehard fan like me that reads the comic book and other stuff, this is a character that you may be familiar, but I think they do a good job introducing her, and they did really well portraying her origin story of who she is and the beginning of who she's becoming. And I think both sides, whether you're like a diehard fan of the superhero genre or not, just a casual fan, I think this film does such an amazing job um catering to both, and they gave Ruthie the underdog s- uh character feel, personality, and you're going to end up rooting for her whether you're familiar with her or not. I think you start rooting for her, and I think they do a really good job because they set the tone up like just this girl is setting out for revenge, and she's willing to take this man's life. And Supergirl throughout this film is trying to show her that you shouldn't do it. It's not going to bring your parents back. And we see the dynamic duo because when this happens, she goes out to a bar or pub where Supergirl and Crypto are at, and it's very silly, very comedy through this scene. But she comes in, and we see Supergirl like take over the jukebox, and she plugs in her iPod, the mini iPods that I haven't. I think first generation, second generation iPods before the iPhones ever existed, and she wires it up to the jukebox, plays her song. I forget the name of the song, but I apologize, everybody. But she's dancing, having a good time. She's taking shots. Crypto's having a good time, just being a silly dog. And then Ruthie comes in, and she's like, "Hey, everybody!" In this scene, we see her say, "I need somebody to help her take revenge on Krim." And then these creepy thugs slash alien species start antagonizing her, and one of them took her sword. And this was the sword that she was going to give a reward if somebody helps her get revenge on Krim and take his life away. But Supergirl, thanks to Crypto the dog, make guilt tripping Supergirl. Uh, Kara goes in and stops this, and she lays the smack down on this big old giant monster alien who's big, strong, and buff, and just shows that even on a planet that has a red sun, she's still she's still good. She's still capable of taking down people. She still has the super strength that she has as just being a Kryptonian. So it really they did a really good job, and I love all the fight scenes in this film. So they did a really excellent job in this. Now, Ruth does ask Supergirl for help, but the first time she says no, and then we get to another scene where Ruth finds Supergirl is spaceship and knocks, and before that we see Supergirl answering a phone call for Superman, and you know, throughout this film, we don't really see these two actually meet up until we get closer to the end of this film, where Supergirl and Superman finally are in the same scene in the same room together, but they're video calling, and Supergirl is just like, "Nah, I don't want to talk. Yeah, yeah, I get it." And then Ruth comes in, and then this is where they things start picking up as Ruth is trying to convince her, but Supergirl's trying to tell her this is not even a good idea. But they both need but they both at this time don't need nothing. But then things turn dark. Now, if you own a pet or you're a current pet owner of a fur baby, this one hurts because Krim and his whole gang came up, found, which I feel like they cut a few scenes out because how did he find Supergirl's spaceship, and where was he coming from? But I feel like they cut some scenes out for the length of the movie purpose, obviously, which that's pretty normal in all movies. But I wish they kept this part in to kind of give us them where were they at and how did they find her and why did they find her in the first place. You know, and they never really answered that in that way. I feel like maybe they did. I just don't remember. But I when I watched it, I didn't catch anything. It just seems like um his main plan was just to is literally sex trafficking. He just Krim and his whole gang literally just steal girls to pretty much reproduce his culinary, his gang, his turf, his mission, his reasons, right? And we'll talk about more later, but that's kind of the main premise of what Krim and his gang's about is just kidnapping little girls or teenage girls, whatever, or young adults. But so they never really explained how, but they for some reason they found her or they just knew Ruth was there. Obviously, you kind of have to what I'm thinking is if word got out that there's this girl who was looking for Krim and made an offer to help pay to take his life away. And I think Krim and his whole gang got word of it, and then they went to hunt Ruth down, and they just happened to come across Supergirl. But I think again, I think they cut that scene out. So because throughout this film, everybody's snitching, everybody's like loyal to this guy, everybody's making dirty deals with this guy just to stay alive and survive because he is a pretty strong dude. You know, he's strong, like Captain America strong, Superman strong, you know, all strong, just super strong. So we see that, and the sad thing started, things got ugly when Crypto started to attack Krim, and well, dog owners, pet owners, it got nasty. He shot Crypto with kryptonite, poisoned him with kryptonite, and it got bad, and he had, of course, he had the antidote around his neck that we find out later. So now Supergirl's upset because we start seeing flashbacks of Kryptonian, the planet Kryptonian. We see flashbacks throughout this film of kind of like Supergirl's origin story before you know the planet went away. We see a young puppy, Crypto the dog. Of course, he's being silly and he's being a dog. He's playing in the trash, and he's just untrained. He's just an untrained dog, but that dog's super super strong. So it's hard to discipline the dog. You just gotta hope he don't eat chocolate, right? But now it's sad. If you're a pet owner, it was tough for me to see an animal get hurt, and that's a huge villain. If a real villain is a true villain, a horrible villain is when they hurt an animal and kids too. But this Krim guy is stealing little girls and hurting dogs. You know, he's gonna hurt all the animals. He's a bully. He's a jerk. Like this is a villain make that you can eliminate, which we'll talk about later in this film. But made sense to me. And to me, this was on the right path of telling a superhero story. So it really got me there. A real good superhero film gets you gets you in the heart. Messes with your emotions, keeps you in suspense. Because now where everybody was focused, locked in on the big screen. So they did a really good job with that. Didn't like seeing Crypto getting shot by kryptonite. That's the stuff the Batman's got. So just saying. Now, the main plot of this movie is there's a alien doctor who says that Kara has 3 moons slash 3 days to find the antidote, which is again around Krim's neck, and he wears it like a necklace. And throughout the scene, he's just taunting Supergirl with it, and it becomes very challenging. So this is one of many emotional scenes where it's a tear jerking. You're holding back the tears. You're getting ready to cry. You don't want to cry, and also this film starts up with another type of story where we see the relationship between Supergirl and Ruth, bond like sisters. They never met each other, but they have similarities of situations, of course, losing their parents. And so Supergirl's big sister, Ruth, is little sister. And they have a sister bond, and throughout this film, they act like they've been knowing each other for a long time because they can relate to a lot of things. So it's two young women going on a crazy Supergirl adventure through this whole film all over the galaxy in space. So we got a lot of that, right? And so one of the adventures with many funny comedy scenes that Supergirl at first she's like, Ruth, you can't come with me. I'm not here to help you get revenge because taking someone's life is not going to bring your parents back. But what's really funny is I thought it was hilarious that they have a public city bus in outer space and she has to take that. Well, things get a little twisty because Ruth sneaks on that bus. It's a public bus. And Seth Rogen plays this really, really tiny character who kind of helps drive the bus. And he's hilarious too. So I was like, damn, I didn't even know Seth Rogen was in that thing. But this public spaceship bus gets hijacked by space pirates. And it's up to Supergirl and Ruth to stop them getting robbed. And it's a whole action scene. It's funny. We see the punching and the reversing and disappearing, like all that. But then Supergirl needs the yellow sun, the sun that we have today, which the sun is out for me on my side. But she needs that sun to kind of touch on her, have the sun rays because like Superman, Supergirl needs the sun to have her power kind of boost up, right? And she tries to do it sneakily, but one of the space pirates catches her and kicks her out into outer space. Now, another moment that reminds me of Guardian of the Galaxy is when Supergirl's in outer space and the sun's not touching her, the sun rays, she's frozen up. She can't move. But in a oh no, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Boom, the sun hits her. Supergirl's power kicks in. She flies, takes down everybody, lays the smack down on them, and then she takes the four main space female space pirates, right? And she talks to them and gets the information on where Krim's at. And I just want to point out there's a scene where before they did some like investigating, interrogating, there was like a rest stop slash gas station in outer space. And as I mentioned, like there's a lot of Guardian Galaxy feels, but there's also like a Star Wars vibe to it too, because there's a floating gas station above clouds or whatever. And there's this like worm type bug just literally pooping out popcorn. They call it poop corn. And my favorite part was I thought it was so funny when she ate it. She's like, "Oh my god, this tastes like crap," because it's literally poop, literally poop. Now, Krim is on a planet called Bilki, which again, this is where we learn that they're doing a lot of sex trafficking with a lot of women type stuff. And again, this gives a lot of Mad Max like vibes to it as well throughout this film as well. Because of this, the way Krim is getting them, he needs a bunch of wives. He wants everybody to be his wives to reproduce and create a new population. And throughout that, when they finally get to that, we meet Lobo after we get a full fight out after Supergirl has an arm wrestling contest because every person in this planet wants Ruth, because they all probably work for Krim, and it gets a little nasty. But Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, I think did an amazing job as he has a funny, kick ass personality, fights, and he's a little bit of a softy because he always does the superhero heroic stuff eventually. And so in that scene, the owners of this like restaurant slash bar ends up turning on Supergirl and Ruth because their daughter's been captured. And Krim, and I'm sure he was lying, said, if you give me these two girls, I'll give you your daughter back. And What's really interesting too is what I like about this is there's like these real life situations in a way, but imagine like they put Supergirl in this situation, and what was Supergirl because she represents hope. She's somebody who's a superhero who can fight these situations where maybe the men are overpowering her. For example, they poison her tea or whatever, but she drinks like this milk, what's like from a disgusting alien who is kind of like a cat, so it's kind of like drinking cat milk. But this milk, when you drink milk, it helps her, overcome this poison. And Supergirl's strong, even though this was like a red sun planet, she could still kind of, well, it was actually yellow sun. I apologize, but she that poison kind of messed her up. But she can be in these situations where any other woman got poisoned like that, they're in a very vulnerable situation. And so through that, they stopped that, and which was awesome. And then we see through this is this whole battle, and they're trying to save each other. They're trying to save Ruth. They're trying to get the girl back for the family who turned on them. And this is where we see Lobo with his awesome motorcycle that flies in outer space. He's kind of like Ghost Rider, but has a Deadpool personality. And they stop this, but unfortunately, Krim wins and his gang wins, and Krim takes out that family and the girl for whatever reason. And again, they're foreshadowing the fact that Supergirl is going to have to take his life away because this is a villain who is not willing to change, and he's not willing to compromise, and he's not going to stop doing this, as we learned throughout this film, which I thought was pretty obvious, the way they foreshadow it. And obviously, she'll probably use the sword too. Now, in the next scene, according to Supergirl, this planet again didn't exist, but we know that all this kidnapping these girls are really bad. So, again, we're learning she's learning that there's so much other things that's going on, and I think they're building something up that could be more connected to Superman, Man of Tomorrow. I think that's the next film for next year, but they're kind of teasing some stuff, foreshadow some things. So I thought that was really cool with that. But to see that, I love that fight scene where kind of like Krim and his gang kind of win, but it shows like it makes you want to care for Supergirl, makes you want to care for Ruth and root for them and see these two women kick some ass in the best way they could. And I think they're going to achieve that at some point. Obviously, they do through this film. So they really knocked it out with that. So I thought I liked that scene, and it was very emotional. Supergirl went up and screamed where they couldn't hear her, and she started crying. I mean, really tearjerker moment, like really emotional, because it's really trying to make you care and make you understand for Supergirl. The next thing we get to, by the time we get closer to the end of this film, we get to a planet, which I can't pronounce the name right, but it's a planet where it has the green sun, and the green sun's not good because what happened is Supergirl found out where they're at, and Supergirl didn't want Ruth to go because after Supergirl and Ruth witness Krim, cold blood murder this whole family, and Supergirl, when they had like a conversation before all that battle scene where Supergirl was explaining to Ruth like, and I like how they did this. It's like she was explaining the difference between her and Superman, her cousin, that she sees the whole she sees the whole world, she sees the whole galaxy as it is. He sees it in a different point where he's, as she likes to call him, a nerd, right? Because we get the flashbacks, we see like an example, how she first landed. They showed the origin story about she was born 8 years after the planet Kryptonian exploded. And it also explains too, like, maybe I honestly feel like Superman's parents, like, were not good people. I think they acted like they were gods, right? Because if you remember that Superman movie, the whole thing was Superman had this one video hologram, and he couldn't speak Kryptonian because Superman was obviously a baby and he was born in Kansas City. So he never got to meet his parents. He never got to meet the Kryptonians and stuff. And it proves that Lex Luthor, sorry, wrong person. Lex Luthor didn't AI or CGI or edit the video that Superman had in his lair. His parents literally wanted his son to have many wives and breed them and have many kids to generate a new planet of the next generation of Kryptonians, and planet Earth was going to be the new home of Kryptonians. And what's really interesting is Supergirl's parents, especially her dad, is the brother of Superman's dad, and he didn't agree what his brother wanted to do, which was Superman to be the god harem, you know, make babies, be the king of the world, the god of the world of Earth, basically. And luckily, Superman's not like that in this universe, but that's different. So I like that. So it really proves that, and it's a really interesting viewpoint to say maybe Superman's parents weren't great people, and we see that Supergirl's family, parents, and the rest of the Kryptonians couldn't survive because all that kryptonite radiation was killing them, and they send her off with crypto, and her to struggle and find her place in life is really struggling. But she never gives up because her mom made her promise that she would use her powers, her ability for good, right? Because before Supergirl's mom was going to pass away due to the cryp- kryptonite, again, she had in her mind that Superman's parents sent Clark Kent to take over Earth, basically. Like, in a way, Superman was supposed to be the villain in this, and it's an interesting way to put that at. And I think that's really cool that they're kind of going that, but they're also showing, like, you know, again, Superman's not going that route, you know, and I'm glad. I'm glad. I understand that the Zack Snyder verse was going to go that route in a sense of it, but I couldn't. It's just we need Superman to be good. I'm hoping, and to see that, and I like how, like, they didn't make Supergirl kind of like gritty and brutish and negative like a Homelander. She's willing to say, you know what, even all that has happened to me, I'm gonna be the bigger person. I'm not gonna let people suffer for my selfish needs. It's just being very heroic. And so I like that. So when she went to this planet and knowing this crypt, the green sun was gonna kill her, Ruth tried her best, but she got locked up. But then we see her and Lobo team up to break out, and then we see this huge escape battle and stuff. And luckily, the sun turned green to yellow, and Supergirl came in. We had this huge battle between everybody. It was like Mad Max style. And at the end of this film, we see Supergirl, talk some sense into Ruth because this was the final battle, and Krim was down and out, and he and Supergirl laid the smackdown on him. I mean, she tossed him around, grabbed him by his leg, and slammed him back and forth like boom, 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 right? Like just and also it showed Ruth, but what Supergirl did was she took Ruth's sword and made Ruth go somewhere else, and she stabbed and murdered Krim. Now the I'm an, and I liked how the route they went with that, because obviously in the comic book Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, Crypto just needed time to heal. He would have his body, the dog's body would have eliminated that poison kryptonite. But for the sake of the film, she needed to get the antidote to save Crypto the dog. That's the only difference. So she stabbed him, but she didn't stab him in a brutal death. She stabbed him in only two spots, and it wasn't like it is in a way it is humane, but it's not humane. Like she didn't like, snap his neck. She didn't punch him in the chest. She just did a stabbed him in the gut and in the throat, right? But she made that sacrifice too, and she's gonna carry that guilt for the sake of Ruth, because she doesn't want Ruth to go down this path. But I think even though they had a happy ending after that, where they come together and hang out and become friends, and then we don't see Ruth because at the final end, after we finally see Supergirl and Superman in the same room with Crypto, and she tells him that they're staying on Earth in Metropolis, basically. And it had a funny ending where Crypto was getting into the kitchen and he was about to eat chocolate. Now, I don't think chocolate is gonna kill Crypto the dog, because chocolate, if kryptonite can, it's got to be kryptonite basically to kill a Kryptonian, basically. So I don't think chocolate was a big deal, but it's very safe and very heroic of Superman, Boy Scout type thing, to do the right thing. So that's how that film ended. Now, what I liked about this, and I don't know why Rotten Tomato, as far as the critics, and I see a lot of other content creators say this, but for Rotten Tomato, give it a 59 or a 57 or a 60% is completely blows my mind. This whole film is a typical Supergirl adventure that you would read in a Supergirl comic book, right? And this thing has so much and it's so good. It was a simple story, it was really balanced. It catered to the casual fans and the diehard fans of the superhero genre movies and shows. And to me, this was the best, one of the best DC films. I'd put this in top 10. No, not top 10, top 5. Like it made sense. It is a Supergirl movie. This is what she will interact. And they did a really good job showing the difference between Superman and Supergirl. And I think they did a really excellent job. But they didn't change Supergirl for her moral code or heroic code to not take a life, even that she had to. But it made the situation made sense because Krim was not about to stop, right? He was not going to stop hurting these young girls. He's a psychopath in this, right? So it had to be done in the sense, and she made the ultimate sacrifice to save somebody, to save Ruth, who who's still innocent, and the best revenge she can do, as Supergirl said, is live her life and continue to represent her family's legacy. And that's important. So Supergirl did the right thing, and that was the right type of story to tell. That's how you create a cinematic universe and you can expand it. It doesn't need to start introducing Batman, which I wish they do in the sense of it, because I just want to know what James Gunn's version of Batman's gonna be, obviously. But this movie was good. I don't know why people thinking this is trash. I don't know why people think this is overlap. Yeah, the only thing, yeah, I can criticize the some. You know what? I'll put this out there. A lot of times throughout this film, Crypto, obviously, it's a real dog, but also they put a fake dog, the CGI, and they probably used AI. They probably AI to put a dog in there, Crypto the dog, and it looked kind of trashy because in the Superman movie, they really got him, that dog, clean and polished up where you couldn't tell if it was a real dog or a CGI dog. But this one you can kind of really tell, and there's really no excuse why a movie company like that couldn't really put in the extra cash like they always do with other stuff and make sure that dog looked as real through the whole movie. Yeah, I can complain about that. Yes, I can complain. There's a lot of scenes that didn't add up, and I felt like you can tell they cut out a lot of other scenes that were probably that would have made other things make sense at times, but it's not that important because they had to cut a lot of stuff out to fill the demand of how long this movie was going to be. But again, Millie Cock, she did such a good job as Supergirl. She portrayed this character so well. She brought Supergirl to life, and I think she played Supergirl better than anybody. She understood it, the assignment. She played this character. She understood the mannerisms of Supergirl. So I think they did a good job. And Jason Momoa did an amazing job being Lobo. And Eve Ridley, she does such an amazing job introducing this unknown, maybe not so famous DC comic character, but introduced and gave it that underdog tone to it, but made people want to care. And I think putting her in other films is going to make, they got so much. I honestly think they should do a whole trilogy for the Supergirl of Supergirl. Like two more films. Like this is worth it. I think they need to do a Supergirl 2, and I think they needed to do a Supergirl 3. Bring it all. I think they can tell such an amazing story. This is the right way to go with a lot of these DC characters. And I think it's gonna work. It doesn't always, I feel like we don't need to make it so, like, what would these characters do in a realistic, in real world life? Let's just stick to the comic books. And I think they did, even though they didn't really take a lot of inspiration from Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. They kind of walk backwards on that, which is fine. I get it. You can't really always do that. But I think this was an amazing film. And I think it's worth doing. And I think it deserves a higher score from Rotten Tomatoes and from everybody, honestly. Because, and they foreshadow a lot of stuff. They're teasing the idea of like, okay, Supergirl is growing up. This is like, I always said, like, it reminds me of like the Batman year one. This is year one for Supergirl. She's trying to figure out how to be Supergirl. She's trying to figure out how to be a superhero. And her going on this adventure, this mission, being in the situation taught her how to do it. And I think she's going to get better and better, you know. And I like seeing that. This was a really good origin story of who Supergirl is. Yes, they have told get from the CW, but I think in a movie, this was the best one. And I support it and I love everything about it. And I think if I had to give this a film uh a 1 out of 10, this is an 8 out of a 10. Really good. Yeah, it had its flaws, but those flaws to me doesn't end the DC, this new version of the rebooted of the DCU. I think this is an awesome film, and it's okay. It doesn't. It might not lead up to Batman, but I think James Gunn and DC Studios are gonna go the route they're gonna go, and I think at some point we're gonna look back. People are gonna look back and realize, you don't have to go the same route Marvel Studios has taken all the Marvel comic characters in live action and do their format of how to connect a movie and a show and connect it to make you show they share the same universe. The route that they're going with their characters, they can be in the same universe and not have to have something that shows you that this connects to Batman. This connects to this. It shows how this connects to Superman, and that's important because Supergirl and Superman are cousins, so it needs to connect to their family tree and who they are, and it has to connect to Metropolis, which I think they did an excellent job making remind you of Metropolis, Lex Luthor, and other villains. So to me, it makes sense, and I think this is one of the best summer blockbuster films. But I do think Spider-Man: Brand New Day is gonna outshine it and have a better story to it, in my opinion. But that's all I'm saying about that. But again, I liked how they showed like maybe Superman's parents weren't so great, and maybe Supergirl's parents were the good people, were the good guys. They weren't talking about trying to take over the world or expand their race and live on a bigger planet, aka Earth. So I think they nailed it with this. I think it's an interesting take on it, and it's an interesting route. And I like how Supergirl dealt with her grieveness. I like how she needed just to be alone, but needed a reason to realize, okay, I need to take my responsibilities more serious. And I liked how that important message in it. So to me, this film is an 8 out of 10, and it's a really good superhero movie in general. And I honestly loved it. I hope you guys enjoyed this film. I hope you at least appreciate it for what it is. But it had such a good, I mean, s- it was funny and it was very emotional at times. I love that. That's one of my favorite parts in those aspects. And visually, it looked really good. And again, what I said about Crypto the Dog wasn't always really polished. You can tell it was kind of fake and stuff, but Warner Brothers do better on that. But other than that, I liked it, and I hope you will. So that is my spoiler review, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Great Talk and Entertainment official channel. Subscribe, hit that notification button so you can always be updated with all my latest content. Thank you guys, and peace